Naomi Carter had never worn a dress that made her heart race. It wasn't the tightness of the navy blue fabric or the way it hugged her curves. It was what the dress meant. A rare evening where she wasn't the poor girl from Brooklyn, juggling textbooks and bills, but a woman who might finally be seen. Her reflection trembled in the cracked mirror of her small apartment. The cheap bulb above her flickered, throwing flashes of light across her face. Soft brown eyes trembling, lips, hope blooming against reason. She slipped on her modest heels, grabbed the purse that contained all she owned, $23.16, and a paper receipt that smelled faintly of coffee and courage. Ryan Langston had chosen the restaurant Il Forno di Roma, an Italian place on the Upper East Side where the cheapest meal cost more than Naomi made in 2 shifts at the bookstore. He'd smiled that day on campus, leaning against the library's marble column, the autumn sunlight gilding his hair. "You deserve a night that feels like a movie," he'd said. Naomi had believed him. She wanted to. The subway ride from Brooklyn felt like crossing into another life. Each station blurred into echoes of laughter, perfume, and possibilities. In the dark reflection of the window, she looked older, stronger, like the kind of woman who belonged somewhere beautiful. When she finally emerged into the Manhattan night, the city glowed in gold. Cars gleamed under streetlights. Skyscrapers pierced the heavens. Her heart fluttered as she walked toward Il Forno. She imagined Ryan standing there already waiting with that soft half-smile, the one that made her forget she wasn't born for this world. Inside the restaurant shimmered. Crystal chandeliers spilled light like liquid diamonds. The scent of basil and wine lingered in the air. Couples whispered across tables draped in white linen, the kind of quiet intimacy that felt unreachable for someone like Naomi. Still, she whispered to the hostess with forced confidence, "Reservation for 2. Ryan Langston. The hostess checked her expression, polite but sharp. "Of course, this way." Naomi followed, trying to steady her breath. Every clink of silverware sounded like judgment. Every glance reminded her she didn't belong. But Ryan had invited her here. Surely she thought that meant she was wanted. The waiter offered a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Something to drink, Miss Justwater," she said, glancing toward the door. 10. 8:20. 8:35. The minutes dragged, each one heavier than the last. Naomi tried calling. The phone rang twice, then went to voicemail. She checked her reflection in the window, her lipstick still perfect, her eyes bright with something dangerously close to disappointment. By 9 Hausieri, the restaurant had thinned. Laughter faded to murmurs. The waiter returned, his tone brittle beneath courtesy. "Would you like to order now, or are we still waiting for your companion?" Naomi swallowed. He's probably just running late. But she felt it, that ache spreading beneath her ribs, the quiet humiliation of realizing the fairy tale wasn't coming. He wasn't coming. Her phone buzzed. Relief flashed. Maybe it was him with an apology or an excuse. Instead, she read the message and froze. "Payment overdue. $75,000. 48 hours, or consequences for you and your backup contact. You know what we want." Her fingers went cold. The letters blurred into threat and confusion. Wrong number, she thought it had to be. No one knew her. She had nothing, not even a credit card. The waiter hovered again. "Miss, if you're not going to order, Her voice cracked. "I need a minute." "Of course," he said, but his gaze betrayed impatience. The room seemed smaller, the air thinner. Naomi felt eyes on her, whispers curling like smoke. She wanted to disappear. Then a voice cut through the silence, low, commanding calm. "Bring her whatever she wants, and don't ask again." Naomi turned. The man standing beside her table looked nothing like anyone she'd ever met. Tall, easily over 6 feet, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that absorbed the room's light. His hair was dark, his jaw sculpted his presence, radiating something that made time slow. He placed a black card on the table. "Add 20%. And next time, treat a woman with respect." The waiter stammered an apology and retreated instantly. Naomi's breath caught. "You didn't have to." He looked at her, not with pity, but curiosity, like a man who saw more than he should. "You've been waiting for someone who isn't coming," he said softly. "That makes you either brave or heartbreakingly naive." Her cheeks flushed. "Excuse me." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he gestured subtly to her phone. "That message you just received? Show it to me." Her pulse jumped. "How do you—" "Because I got one too," he interrupted. "Same number, different name." She hesitated. "Who are you, Owen Muffin?" The name sounded foreign and familiar all at once, like something whispered in a rumor, like power disguised as politeness. His eyes, pale gray cold, but alive, never left hers. "You shouldn't ignore threats like that. They don't vanish if you pretend not to see them." Naomi's throat went dry. It was probably a mistake. Maybe. He leaned closer. But mistakes don't usually spell your name right. Her heart stopped. She looked down at the message again. Naomi Carter. Written in full. How could they? Owen leaned back, calm, measured. "Tell me about Ryan Langston. What does Ryan have to do with this?" He didn't blink. Everything. A chill ran through her veins. "What are you saying?" Owen's gaze softened, almost regretful. "I'm saying, Miss Carter, the man who left you waiting tonight owes very dangerous people a great deal of money. And he used your name as collateral." The world tilted. The laughter, the light, the soft piano music all blurred into static. "That's insane," she whispered. "He wouldn't." But the look on Owen's face told her otherwise. He didn't need to convince her. The truth was already unfolding, like a slow, inevitable storm. "Go home," he said finally, his voice quiet but absolute. "Lock your doors. And if anyone contacts you again, call this number." He slid a small, unmarked card across the table. Naomi stared at it, afraid to touch it. "Why are you helping me?" Owen's mouth curved into something between a smile and a warning. "Because nobody cries alone in my city." He rose and walked away, his steps silent on the marble floor. For a long moment, Naomi sat frozen, a girl in a borrowed dress clutching her phone, and a stranger's card that felt heavier than fate. Outside, the city pulsed with light. The same message glowed again on her screen, repeating itself. But this time beneath it, one new line appeared. "He can't protect you forever." Naomi looked toward the glass doors where Owen had just disappeared, her reflection fractured in the chandelier's light. Something inside her whispered that the night wasn't over, it had only begun. And deep down, she already knew whatever world that man belonged to, she had just stepped inside it. Naomi Carter had never worn a dress that made her heart race. It wasn't the tightness of the navy blue fabric or the way it hugged her curves, it was what the dress meant. A rare evening where she wasn't the poor girl from Brooklyn juggling textbooks and bills, but a woman who might finally be seen. Her reflection trembled in the cracked mirror of her small apartment. The cheap bulb above her flickered, throwing flashes of light across her face. Soft brown eyes, trembling lips, hope blooming against reason. Hope. She slipped on her modest heels, grabbed the purse that contained all she owned. $23.16 and a paper receipt that smelled faintly of coffee and courage. Ryan Langston had chosen the restaurant Il Forno di Roma, an Italian place on the Upper East Side, where the cheapest meal cost more than Naomi made in 2 shifts at the bookstore. He'd smiled that day on campus, leaning against the library's marble column, the autumn sunlight gilding his hair. "You deserve a night that feels like a movie," he'd said. Naomi had believed him. She wanted to. The subway ride from Brooklyn felt like crossing into another life. Each station blurred into echoes of laughter, perfume, and possibilities. In the dark reflection of the window, she looked older, stronger, like the kind of woman who belonged somewhere beautiful. When she finally emerged into the Manhattan night, the city glowed in gold. Cars gleamed under streetlights. Skyscrapers pierced the heavens. Her heart fluttered as she walked toward Il Forno. She imagined Ryan standing there, already waiting, with that soft half-smile, the one that made her forget she wasn't born for this world. Inside the restaurant shimmered. Crystal chandeliers spilled light like liquid diamonds. The scent of basil and wine lingered in the air. Couples whispered across tables draped in white linen, the kind of quiet intimacy that felt unreachable for someone like Naomi. Still, she whispered to the hostess with forced confidence, "Reservation for 2. "Ryan Langston." The hostess checked her expression, polite but sharp. "Of course, this way." Naomi followed, trying to steady her breath. Every clink of silverware sounded like judgment. Every glance reminded her she didn't belong. But Ryan had invited her here. Surely she thought that meant she was wanted. The waiter offered a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Something to drink, Miss Justwater?" she said, glancing toward the door. 10. 8:20. 8:35. The minutes dragged, each one heavier than the last. Naomi tried calling. The phone rang twice, then went to voicemail. She checked her reflection in the window, her lipstick still perfect, her eyes bright with something dangerously close to disappointment. By 9:00, the restaurant had thinned. Laughter faded to murmurs. The waiter returned, his tone brittle beneath courtesy. "Would you like to order now, or are we still waiting for your companion?" Naomi swallowed. "He's probably just running late." But she felt it, that ache spreading beneath her ribs, the quiet humiliation of realizing the fairy tale wasn't coming. He wasn't coming. Her phone buzzed. Relief flashed. Maybe it was him with an apology or an excuse. Instead, she read the message and froze. "Payment overdue. $75,000. 48 hours, or consequences for you and your backup contact. You know what we want." Her fingers went cold. The letters blurred into threat and confusion. Wrong number, she thought it had to be. No one knew her. She had nothing, not even a credit card. The waiter hovered again. "Miss, if you're not going to order." Her voice cracked. "I need a minute." "Of course," he said, but his gaze betrayed impatience. The room seemed smaller, the air thinner. Naomi felt eyes on her, whispers curling like smoke. She wanted to disappear. Then a voice cut through the silence, low, commanding calm. "Bring her whatever she wants. And don't ask again." Naomi turned. The man standing beside her table looked nothing like anyone she'd ever met. Tall, easily over 6 feet, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that absorbed the room's light. His hair was dark. His jaw sculpted his presence, radiating something that made time slow. He placed a black card on the table. "Add 20%. And next time, treat a woman with respect." The waiter stammered an apology and retreated instantly. Naomi's breath caught. "You didn't have to." He looked at her not with pity, but curiosity, like a man who saw more than he should. "You've been waiting for someone who isn't coming," he said softly. "That makes you either brave or heartbreakingly naive." Her cheeks flushed. "Excuse me." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he gestured subtly to her phone. "That message you just received? Show it to me." Her pulse jumped. "How do you—" "Because I got one too," he interrupted. "Same number, different name?" She hesitated. "Who are you?" "Owen Muffin." The name sounded foreign and familiar all at once, like something whispered in a rumor, like power disguised as politeness. His eyes, pale gray cold but alive, never left hers. "You shouldn't ignore threats like that. They don't vanish if you pretend not to see them." Naomi's throat went dry. It was probably a mistake. "Maybe." He leaned closer. "But mistakes don't usually spell your name right." Her heart stopped. She looked down at the message again. Naomi Carter. Written in full. How could they? Owen leaned back, calm, measured. "Tell me about Ryan Langston." "What does Ryan have to do with this?" He didn't blink. "Everything." A chill ran through her veins. "What are you saying?" Owen's gaze softened, almost regretful. "I'm saying, Miss Carter, the man who left you waiting tonight owes very dangerous people a great deal of money, and he used your name as collateral." The world tilted. The laughter, the light, the soft piano music all blurred into static. "That's insane," she whispered. He wouldn't, but the look on Owen's face told her otherwise. He didn't need to convince her. The truth was already unfolding like a slow, inevitable storm. "Go home," he said finally, his voice quiet but absolute. "Lock your doors, and if anyone contacts you again, call this number." He slid a small, unmarked card across the table. Naomi stared at it, afraid to touch it. "Why are you helping me?" Owen's mouth curved into something between a smile and a warning. "Because nobody cries alone in my city." He rose and walked away, his steps silent on the marble floor. For a long moment, Naomi sat frozen, a girl in a borrowed dress, clutching her phone and a stranger's card that felt heavier than fate. Outside, the city pulsed with light. The same message glowed again on her screen, repeating itself, but this time beneath it, one new line appeared. He can't protect you forever. Naomi looked toward the glass doors where Owen had just disappeared, her reflection fractured in the chandelier's light. Something inside her whispered that the night wasn't over. It had only begun. And deep down, she already knew whatever world that man belonged to, she had just stepped inside it. The rain began before dawn, soft and steady, like the city was whispering secrets only the sleepless could hear. Naomi Carter hadn't slept. She sat by the narrow window of her apartment, her phone resting in her palm, the stranger's card beside it. Black, unmarked, as if the name Owen Muffin existed only in the hush between heartbeats. She'd replayed the night in her head 100 times, the restaurant lights, his voice, the way he'd said her name as if it carried weight. But mostly she couldn't forget the text message. Payment overdue. $75,000. She'd deleted it, but her chest still felt tight as if fear had learned her breathing pattern. Outside Brooklyn looked gray and harmless. A dog barked in the alley. Somewhere below, a delivery truck rumbled past. The world moved on, unaware that hers had cracked open. Naomi's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number again. You shouldn't ignore him. Her fingers trembled. We see everything. She flinched, nearly dropping the phone. The message vanished before she could screenshot it, as if the sender wanted her to doubt it had ever been there. A knock sounded at the door. She froze. 2 short, deliberate knocks, too calm to be random. Her first thought wasn't to open it. It was him, the man from last night. She hesitated, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear the rain. Then she unlatched the door. Owen Muffin stood there, dressed in a black coat, drops of rain glistening on his shoulders like small shards of glass. He didn't look surprised to see her, only certain that she'd answer. Good morning, he said, his tone low and even. You didn't sleep? It wasn't a question. Naomi tried to steady herself. How did you find my address? I didn't need to find it, he replied simply. I already knew where you lived. The honesty in his voice was disarming. He walked past her without asking permission, the faint scent of cedar and rain following him. The small apartment suddenly felt smaller. Owen looked around, books stacked against walls, a chipped coffee mug, a small photo of Naomi with her mother. His gaze softened for the first time. You don't lock your windows, he said quietly. You should. Naomi crossed her arms. Do you always just walk into people's lives and start giving safety lectures? I only do that, he said, turning to her when someone's in danger and doesn't know it yet. Something in the way he said it made her pulse skip. He reached into his coat and placed a folded envelope on the table. Ryan Langston disappeared last night. His car was found near the East River. No wallet, no phone, no sign of him. Naomi blinked. Disappeared. Owen's eyes met hers. You're his contact now, Naomi. Whoever he owed money to, they'll come for you instead. I have nothing to do with any of this. I know, he said. That's what makes you dangerous to them. Your leverage. They'll use you to draw me out. Her breath caught. For a second, she saw it, something behind his calm exterior. The faintest trace of a man used to being hunted. I've dealt with the Russos before, he continued. They don't threaten unless they mean to act. And when they act, it's rarely clean. Naomi stepped back, her knees weakening. So, what do you want me to do? Move, hide. Owen shook his head. Neither. You're safer if you stay exactly where you are. They're already watching. The words chilled her blood. She glanced toward the rain-slick window, half expecting a shadow to move behind the glass. Owen's voice softened. I'll have someone nearby. Quietly. You won't notice them, but they'll be there. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, he said. It's supposed to keep you alive. He spoke with such certainty that part of her wanted to believe him. And yet something in her rebelled against how effortlessly he took control of her fear, her space, her world. She tried to meet his gaze. Why are you doing this, really? People don't just protect strangers for fun. Owen studied her for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, his jaw tightened. Because once he said someone I cared about didn't have anyone watching her back. And by the time I got there, it was too late. The silence between them deepened. Rain traced long lines down the window. Naomi's anger softened into something she couldn't name pity, maybe, or recognition. Owen looked away first. I've arranged for the debt to be erased. But that doesn't make you safe yet. Erased, she repeated. Just like that. He gave a faint, humorless smile. Nothing is ever just like that. Her gaze fell to the envelope he'd left on the table. What's in there? Proof, he said. Ryan's trail. Transfers fake accounts names of people he was dealing with. Don't open it unless you have to. Naomi brushed her fingers over the edge of the envelope, feeling the weight of it. The truth pressed between sheets of paper. When she looked up, Owen was already near the door. Wait, she called. You said they're watching. Who exactly are they? He paused, hand on the doorknob. You'll know them when you see them. Then he left the sound of the door closing, lingering longer than his footsteps. Hours passed. The rain eased into silence. Naomi sat at her desk, the envelope still untouched. The city's hum drifted through the thin walls, muffled distant, like life continuing somewhere else. She wanted to believe this would all disappear, that it was just a misunderstanding, that tomorrow she could go back to the bookstore and pretend none of it had ever happened. But deep down, she knew better. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Owen's face composed, yet haunted, his eyes carrying something more than warning. Something personal. She reached for her phone, typing Ryan's name again. No results. His social media had vanished overnight. The number that once called her now played only a dull, empty tone. Her chest tightened. Whatever Ryan had done, it was serious enough to erase him completely. Naomi stood restless. She went to the window, her reflection merging with the city lights outside. For a moment, she thought she saw a figure across the street leaning near a black car. Then the headlights flared, and he was gone. A quiet knock echoed again, a single tap this time lighter than before. She turned, her breath catching. Owen, she called softly. No answer. Cautiously, she opened the door. No one. Only an envelope on the floor, identical to the one he'd left earlier. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. Inside was a single photograph. Ryan, tied to a chair, a bruise under his eye, and behind him, blurred but unmistakable, the symbol of a silver serpent. A mark she'd seen once before, faintly engraved on the back of Owen Muffin's watch. The room tilted. The air turned heavy. Her mind screamed denial, but her heart whispered something colder, sharper, as a truth she didn't want to face. Maybe Owen hadn't saved her from danger. Maybe he was the danger. And by opening that door, she hadn't escaped the storm. She had invited it in. The morning after the photograph arrived, Naomi Carter woke to silence. It wasn't peace, it was the kind of stillness that made every sound feel like a warning. Her coffee went cold before she touched it. She hadn't slept. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the picture again. Ryan tied to a chair, his face swollen, the faint glint of the silver serpent behind him. Owen's watch had the same symbol. She remembered the light catching it that night in the restaurant, a fleeting reflection unnoticed. Then now impossible to forget. She told herself it was a coincidence. It had to be. And yet somewhere deep inside, a small, traitorous voice whispered, "You already know, it's not." The knock came at 9. 2 measured raps, calm, deliberate, unmistakably his. Naomi hesitated, staring at the door, as if her silence could undo what waited behind it. Then slowly she opened it. Owen Muffin stood there again, in a dark suit and rain-damp hair, as composed as ever. Only his eyes betrayed fatigue, faint shadows under them that no amount of control could hide. He looked at her for a long second, as though searching for something. "You saw it." Naomi didn't answer. She stepped aside without speaking, letting him in. The air between them felt heavier this time, charged with questions neither dared to voice. He closed the door behind him. "Who delivered it? I don't know," she said. "It was just there, like it appeared out of nowhere." He nodded, once his expression unreadable. Then quietly, "You shouldn't have opened it." Naomi bristled. "You left the first envelope yourself." How was I supposed to know which one was safe? Owen's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he took a slow breath, walked to the window, and parted the blinds slightly. His posture was still too still, the way people stand when they're listening for danger. "You're being watched again," he said finally. "Not by me this time." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Who are they?" "Owen?" "The Russos." He turned, and for the first time she saw something flicker in his eyes. Not fear exactly, but something close to regret. The Russos want what they've always wanted: leverage control. But this... He gestured toward the envelope still lying on the table. "This is different. They're not warning me. They're testing you, testing me," he nodded. "They want to see how far I'll go to keep you safe." Naomi's breath caught. "Why me? I don't matter." Owen took a step closer, his tone low but steady. "That's where you're wrong." The space between them closed in. She could smell his cologne, subtle, expensive like cedar and rain. His voice dropped to a whisper. "They know I don't make mistakes. I don't attach. I don't care." His gaze met hers. "And yet, here I am." Naomi looked up at him, heart pounding. "Then tell me the truth. Did you send that picture?" Owen didn't flinch. "If I had, you'd never have to ask." Her anger wavered, replaced by confusion. "You expect me to just trust you?" "No," he said softly. "I expect you to survive." He spent the next hour in silence, pacing her small apartment, making phone calls in a voice so controlled it sounded almost inhuman. Naomi sat on the edge of her bed, watching him the way he moved, the precision in every gesture, as if even breathing was an act of discipline. But beneath that restraint was something else: loneliness. A kind that didn't beg for sympathy, but carried it like armor. When he finally ended the last call, he leaned against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment longer than necessary. "Ryan's alive," he said. Naomi's heart lurched. Alive, where somewhere between here and nowhere. His gaze darkened. "They want me to come for him. Which means it's a trap." She rose to her feet. "Then don't go." His lips curved faintly. "You think I can ignore it?" "Yes," she whispered. "If it means you stay alive?" Owen opened his eyes. The silence stretched, the kind that hums between two people who've already crossed a line they can't name. He took a step forward, then another. "You shouldn't care about me, Naomi." "I don't," she said too quickly. But the tremor in her voice betrayed her. His hand lifted slowly, as if fighting himself, until his fingertips brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was feather-light, almost reverent. "You're lying," he said. Naomi's breath hitched. The room felt smaller, warmer, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with bullets or threats. She wanted to move to speak, to remind him that they were strangers bound by fear, not fate. But instead, her heart whispered what her mind refused to say, that somewhere between the danger and the darkness, she'd started to feel safer with him than without him. Then, as if sensing the shift, Owen stepped back. The spell broke. "I'll handle this," he said, voice clipped again. "Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone, not even me, unless I call first." "And if you don't call, then it's not me at the door." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. No name, just a number, and his face hardened. He walked toward the door, speaking as he moved. "Whatever happens, don't follow me." Naomi's voice rose. "Owen." He paused, turning just enough for her to see the faint smile that wasn't really a smile. "I told you before, didn't I? Nobody makes a woman cry in my city." Then he was gone, swallowed by the corridor's shadows. Hours blurred into a restless afternoon. The city outside kept breathing, oblivious. Naomi tried to read, to think, to pretend she wasn't counting the minutes since he'd left. At dusk, thunder rolled over the rooftops. The air felt electric. She turned on the radio just to drown her thoughts, but the voice that came through made her blood freeze. A fire was reported near Pier 17. Authorities suspect arson. No bodies have been identified, but eyewitnesses claim a black sedan was seen moments before the explosion. Her hands shook. Black sedan, Owen's car. She grabbed her phone, dialed his number. Straight to voicemail. "Tried again?" Nothing. The third time the call connected, but there was only static. And then, faintly, a voice that wasn't his. He played a dangerous game, didn't he? Now it's your turn. The line went dead. Naomi's knees gave out. She clutched the edge of the table, her breath shallow. The envelope still lay there, unopened, the one he told her not to touch. With trembling hands, she tore it open. Inside was a single key. No address. No explanation. Only a small, folded note in his handwriting. If you ever doubt me, use this. It opens the truth. She turned the key in her palm, the metal cool against her skin, her reflection trembling in its curve. Outside, the rain began again, harder this time, like the city itself was warning her that love once touched by darkness never came without a price. And somewhere between fear and longing, Naomi realized the truth she had tried to deny. She wasn't just trapped in Owen's world. She was becoming a part of it. The rain had not stopped for 2 days. It fell with a rhythm that sounded almost deliberate, as if the city itself was keeping time with Naomi Carter's heartbeat. Every drop that hit the glass reminded her of his voice, of the night he'd said, "If you ever doubt me, use this." The key lay on her table, catching the dim light of her apartment. A simple object, cold and weighty, carrying too many unanswered questions. She had turned it over in her hands for hours, tracing its worn edges, wondering what the truth meant in Owen Muffin's world, and whether she truly wanted to find it. By now, she'd memorized every scratch on its surface, every faint engraving along the side, AM-17. A clue, perhaps, or another test. She checked her phone again, still no message from Owen. The news had long moved on from the explosion near Pier 17, but the image of the black sedan haunted her. There had been no confirmation, no denial, just silence. And silence, she was learning, could be more terrifying than lies. That evening, she found herself standing in front of a locked door beneath the old Astor building, an address she had discovered by tracing the letters AM through business registrations connected to Owen's name. The building was nearly empty, its marble lobby echoing with the ghosts of forgotten tenants. Her heels clicked against the tile as she descended the narrow stairwell, her breath visible in the chill air. At the bottom, she found it a steel door with a single inconspicuous keyhole. Her hand trembled as she slid the key in. It turned smoothly, almost too easily, as if it had been waiting for her. The door opened with a low, metallic sigh. Inside the room was dimly lit walls, lined with shelves, each filled with files and photographs. A faint hum came from a single monitor still glowing in the corner. She stepped closer, her reflection flickering in the dark screen. There were pictures, dozens of them, of men she didn't know, of crime scenes, and then buried among them her own face. Naomi froze. It was her leaving the bookstore, her at the bus stop, her unlocking her apartment. The earliest one dated back months long before the night she met Owen. Her pulse hammered. Each photo bore the same insignia stamped in the corner, the silver serpent. For a long time, she couldn't move. Her body understood before her mind could accept it. Owen hadn't just found her that night. He had been watching her. She stumbled back, her knees weak. "Oh my God! Naomi!" The voice behind her was quiet, familiar, a whisper of smoke. She spun around. Owen stood in the doorway, shadows cutting across his face. His coat was damp, his expression unreadable. "How did you find this place?" he asked. She lifted the key like a weapon. "You left it for me." For the first time since she'd met him, he looked startled, not at her presence, but at her words. "I didn't." Her throat went dry. "Then who did?" He took a step forward, his voice steady but low. "Naomi, you need to leave this place, right now." She backed away. "No, not until you tell me why you've been following me, why my pictures are here." His jaw clenched. "Because if I didn't, you'd be dead." "Don't twist this," her voice cracked. "You said you wanted to protect me, not watch me like some experiment." Owen exhaled slowly, like a man trying to calm a storm already too far gone. "Listen to me. That room, those files, they're not mine. They belong to the man I used to work for. Before all this," he said quietly. "I wasn't who you think I am." Naomi stared at him, her heart pounding against her ribs. Then who are you? He looked around the room as if the walls themselves were listening. A long time ago, I helped the Russos clean money through offshore accounts. I thought I was smarter than them. I thought I could walk away. He met her eyes, and the truth in them was colder than the rain. They killed the only person who ever tried to stop me. Who, she whispered. My fiancé. The word landed like a blade. Naomi felt it sharp and personal even though she had no right to. He continued quieter now. After she died, I burned everything, my name, my life, every deal I ever made. The only thing I kept was this mark. He pulled back his sleeve just enough for the serpent tattoo to catch the light. A reminder of what I lost. She couldn't look away. His pain was raw, unpolished, the kind that didn't beg for sympathy because it no longer believed in forgiveness. But the question she feared most rose anyway. Then why me, Owen? Why was I in those pictures? His answer was a whisper. Because your father once worked for the same people, and they never forget their debts. Her breath caught. My father. He died when I was 12. I know, Owen said. And I know he didn't die the way you were told. The air thickened the rain outside a dull roar. Naomi shook her head. No, stop. Your father uncovered something, a ledger that could destroy the Russos. He went to the police. They made it look like an accident. Her chest ached, her pulse racing. You're lying, I wish I were. He reached for her, but she stepped back. You used me, she said, voice trembling. You knew who I was all along. His silence was answer enough. Tears burned her eyes, blurring the outlines of the files. The monitors, the man standing in front of her, the man she'd begun to trust. You don't protect people, Owen. You own them. He flinched barely. Then his tone turned grave. Naomi, please. If you stay angry, you'll miss what matters. They're not just watching you. They're waiting for you to run. Something crashed upstairs, a door slamming, footsteps descending fast. Owen's head snapped toward the sound. In one fluid motion, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her behind a steel cabinet. Stay quiet, he mouthed. Naomi's pulse hammered as the basement door burst open. Shadows spilled into the room. A man's voice echoed, harsh, accented, unfamiliar. Check the files. He's close. Owen's grip tightened. Their faces were inches apart, the air between them, electric with fear and something else, that terrible, undeniable pull. When the footsteps receded, he turned to her again, whispering, You see now why I didn't want you here. She could barely breathe. Who are they? The ones who sent that key, he said. And they're not after me anymore, Naomi. They're after you. Before she could reply, the lights went out. Total darkness. The smell of damp metal and dust filled her lungs. Owen's hand found hers in the blackness. Firm, steady trembling, just enough for her to feel that he was human after all. Come with me, he murmured. But in the dark, with her heart breaking and the truth unraveling around her, Naomi wondered if he was saving her or taking her deeper into the one place she might never escape. The rain returned that night, gentle at first, like a whisper against the window pane. Then steadier, harder, until it blurred the city lights into trembling reflections. Naomi Carter sat alone, her fingers tracing the silver key resting in her palm. It was cold smooth and impossibly heavy for its size, as if it carried a secret she wasn't meant to hold. If you ever doubt me, use this. It opens the truth. Owen's words echoed in her mind, too calm, too deliberate. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe the man who had stood in her doorway soaked in rain, who had looked at her like she was something fragile and fierce at once. But the photograph of Ryan and the serpent emblem still haunted her. The key glinted beneath the lamplight. The engraving AM-17 shimmered faintly. She had stared at it so long the letters had burned themselves behind her eyelids. Her phone was silent. No messages, no calls, no sign of Owen Muffin. For 2 nights she hadn't seen him, not even the shadow of the black car that usually lingered across the street. And that absence frightened her more than his presence ever had. By morning, she couldn't stay still any longer. The rain had softened to a mist curling around the corners of Brooklyn's old buildings. She slipped into a beige coat, tucked the key into her pocket, and followed her instincts, or perhaps the part of her that still believed in him. The letters AM led her to a half-forgotten part of the city Astoria Mills, an industrial district long abandoned after the recession. The kind of place that smelled of rust, ghosts, and secrecy. The building she found was gray and faceless, its windows sealed by time. Yet on the third door down, she saw a small brass lock marked 17. Her heart began to race. She hesitated one breath too, then slid the key into the lock. It turned without resistance. The door opened to a narrow stairwell leading underground. Every step echoed. Every sound felt like it was waiting to be heard. At the bottom, the air was cold and metallic. She found herself in a long corridor lined with old storage rooms. One was lit by a single flickering bulb. Inside a desk, an aging computer, and a wall covered in photographs. She stepped closer, her breath fogging in the chill. The first few pictures were unfamiliar men in suits meetings, docks at night. Then her hand froze. It was her, Naomi Carter leaving her bookstore. Naomi crossing the street near her apartment. Naomi sitting alone in a cafe reading. There were timestamps, dates stretching back months, far before she'd met Owen. A trembling disbelief filled her chest. She reached for one of the photographs, and beneath it she found another. Not of her, but of him. Owen standing beside a man with a snake tattoo curling along his neck, the same silver serpent she'd seen in Ryan's photograph. The edges of the world began to blur. Her voice broke the silence. "What is this? You weren't supposed to see it." The voice behind her was low, steady, unmistakable. Naomi turned. Owen stood in the doorway, coat unbuttoned, tie, loosened rein dripping from his sleeves. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, that pale gray storm, looked almost tired. Her pulse stumbled. "You were following me," she whispered. He didn't answer. "You were following me, months before we met Naomi." "Don't say my name like that." Her voice trembled, but the fury underneath it was new, sharp, foreign. "You said you found me by chance. You said you just noticed." Owen took a step forward, and the shadows followed him. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way." "What wasn't?" "You weren't supposed to matter." The words hit her like a slap. For a moment she forgot how to breathe. "What does that mean?" He looked away. "You were supposed to be a name on a list, that's all." Her throat tightened. A list for what Owen's silence told her the truth before his words could. Ryan owed them money, he said finally. But it wasn't just money. He was working for a branch of the Russo family laundering cash through small businesses. "He used you as a decoy." Her voice cracked. "And I was sent to make sure his debts were collected." The room tilted. The rain outside sounded distant, unreal. "So this was all business," she whispered. At first he said softly, "Until you opened the door that night. Until you looked at me like I wasn't the monster they said I was." Naomi stepped back, her spine pressing against the cold wall. "And now, are you?" He didn't deny it, didn't confirm it either. Only watched her, the weight of guilt pulling the edges of his composure apart. "Owen, that photograph Ryan's?" "I didn't send it," he said quickly. "But I know who did." She waited. "The man in that picture with me, his name is Victor Russo. He thinks I turned against them. He's not wrong. He wants you because you're the only thing left that can hurt me." Naomi shook her head. "I don't understand. You were never supposed to be part of this world," he said, stepping closer. "And now you are." His voice had changed, no longer cold, no longer calculated. There was something raw beneath it, something that made her heart ache even as her mind screamed to run. She looked up at him, eyes shimmering. "Why me?" His answer came like a confession. "Because when I watched you, I saw the life I might have had if I'd never chosen the dark." The words silenced her. The distance between them closed. He reached out, brushing his thumb gently across her cheek, not possessive, not demanding, but with a tenderness that hurt more than any lie. His hand lingered. "You make me want to stop running." She didn't pull away, couldn't. But when he leaned in, the faint echo of footsteps above them shattered the moment. He went still. They found us. Owen, he pressed his finger to her lips. Don't speak. Whatever happens, don't let them take you. The light flickered, dimmed, then went out entirely. For a heartbeat, there was only the sound of the rain above them and the rhythm of two hearts beating too fast in the dark. Then the door exploded inward. Shouts, boots, a flash of silver in the dark. Owen's hand gripped hers, pulling her toward the back exit as bullets tore through the shadows. They ran, the sound of gunfire echoing behind them, the metallic scent of fear heavy in the air. When they burst into the night, Naomi could barely see only his hand. Unrelenting, keeping her tethered to him. They didn't stop until they reached the end of the alley, breathless and soaked. Owen turned, his shirt torn, blood seeping through his sleeve. Naomi stared at him, trembling. You're hurt. He managed a faint, crooked smile. Just another lie they didn't kill me for. Then, as the sirens began to wail in the distance, he whispered almost to himself. There's no truth without blood, Naomi. And now you've seen mine. The safe house smelled faintly of cedar and gun oil. Rainwater dripped from Owen's coat, forming small, dark puddles on the concrete floor. Naomi followed him inside her breath, unsteady, her palms still tingling from the feel of his hand pulling her through the alley's chaos. He leaned against the table light, flickering across the bruises along his jaw. The gunshot that had grazed his arm had soaked through his sleeve, crimson blooming through the fabric like a spreading secret. Naomi shut the heavy door behind them. The sound echoed like the closing of a chapter she hadn't agreed to read. Sit, she said softly. Owen gave her a faint, humorless smile. You're giving orders now. I'm giving you a chance to stay alive. His lips curved just barely. Fair trade. He sank into the chair as she searched the small cabinet for a first aid kit. The silence between them was thick, not hostile but charged full of things neither dared to name. When she found gauze and alcohol, she knelt beside him. Take off your jacket, she said. He obeyed without a word, his movements slower now, fatigue dragging at his edges. When she rolled up his sleeve, she saw the wound clearly shallow but bleeding. The skin around it was streaked with soot and rain. Does it hurt? I've had worse. His voice was low, rougher than usual. You should see the other guy. Maybe I will, she murmured, dipping the cloth into alcohol. If you keep bleeding like this. He chuckled under his breath, a sound that faded as soon as it appeared. When the alcohol touched his skin, he inhaled sharply but didn't flinch. Naomi worked carefully, her fingers trembling only once when she realized how close she was to him. The scent of smoke, rain, and his cologne wrapped around her like a memory she hadn't lived yet. You're not supposed to be here, he said quietly. You could have walked away. And where would I go? She whispered. They're hunting me because of you. His jaw tightened. Because of what I've done. She looked up at him, meeting his eyes. Then stop pretending you're the villain in every story. I'm not pretending, he said. I've earned every sin. Naomi pressed the gauze against his arm. Then maybe you're overdue for forgiveness. Their eyes met, and for a long moment, neither looked away. The storm outside deepened, wind rattling the old shutters. Naomi finished binding the wound and leaned back slightly, her pulse refusing to calm. The lamplight painted his face in soft amber, tracing every sharp line and shadow. Why didn't you tell me the truth? She asked. From the beginning. Because the truth is dangerous. His voice was quieter now, almost tender. And you already had enough danger in your life. I had ordinary problems. Rent, work, coffee that was never hot enough. You brought this chaos with you. I brought protection, he corrected gently. She shook her head. You brought you. That silenced him. For a while, the only sound was the rain. Then she spoke again, softer. You said once that my father was killed because he found something. Was that true? Owen's eyes darkened, the faintest flicker of pain crossing his features. Yes. He discovered a ledger proof that the Russos were laundering money through charitable fronts. He tried to go to the police. They made sure he never got the chance. And you, she asked. What were you doing while my father was dying? He looked away. Collecting debts for the same men who ordered it. Naomi's breath caught the revelation, cutting deeper than any wound. So that's your blood debt, she whispered. He nodded once. and I've been paying it ever since. Something fragile and furious twisted inside her grief, disbelief, compassion she couldn't justify. And saving me now? Is that penance? Maybe, he said. Or maybe it's something selfish. Her voice was barely a breath. What could possibly be selfish about protecting me? His gaze softened, wanting to keep you close, even when I know I shouldn't. Naomi's throat tightened. Then don't. Don't pretend you don't feel it. Her voice trembled, but the words came from somewhere truer than reason. Whatever this is between us, fear, attraction, insanity, stop acting like it's one-sided. He exhaled slow and deliberate, the kind of breath taken before a fall. Naomi, he said her name a confession. You make me remember what it feels like to be human. She wanted to say something, anything, but he reached out his fingers, brushing against hers, tentative at first, then deliberate. The touch sent warmth through her chest that felt almost unbearable. He didn't kiss her. He didn't have to. The silence carried it, the unspoken ache of two people who had no right to want what they did. Then just as suddenly, he pulled his hand back, breaking the spell. His tone turned hard again. Pack your things. We can't stay here. She blinked, startled. What? Why, they'll trace the gunfire from last night. The Russos own half the precinct. By morning, this place will be compromised. And where will we go? His eyes found hers, somewhere they won't expect upstate. There's an old estate my family used to own. No records, no neighbors. Your family? She asked, surprised. You still have one. He gave a humorless laugh. In name only. The Muffin family used to own shipping docks. Now it's just me and ghosts. Naomi rose slowly, watching him rewrap his wound. Ghosts don't scare me anymore. You should be scared of me, he said, his voice almost a whisper. I'm the reason yours exist. She stepped closer. You can't undo the past, Owen, but you can stop it from owning you. He looked up at her then, and for the first time she saw not the man everyone feared, but the man beneath the armor. Tired, guilty, uncertain, human. You talk like you still believe I deserve saving, he murmured. I don't know if you do, she admitted. But I know I can't walk away. Their eyes held. The rain softened, becoming a hush outside. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, a promise, not a warning. Owen reached for his coat, wincing slightly as the wound pulled at his arm. Naomi moved to help, adjusting the fabric across his shoulders. Her hand lingered on his chest, the steady beat beneath her palm grounding them both. He caught her wrist, his thumb brushing against her pulse. Careful, he said, his tone half smile, half plea. Every time you touch me, you make it harder to let you go. Then don't, she whispered. For a heartbeat, he looked like he might answer with something reckless, but instead he released her hand and turned toward the door. We leave before dawn. Naomi watched him in silence, realizing that love, when entangled with danger, wasn't something that bloomed, it bled. And maybe that was the price of feeling anything in a world built on violence. As she stood there listening to the rain against the windows, she understood why it was called a blood debt. Because once you owed your heart to someone like Owen Muffin, there was no paying it back, only surrendering to the cost. The fire dimmed slowly, leaving only the echo of their breathing in the quiet cabin. Naomi looked at Owen, the man she should fear yet couldn't stop trusting. Outside, the snow kept falling, as if trying to bury every secret they'd just uncovered. But some secrets don't stay buried for long. And as the wind whispered through the pines, Owen's eyes darkened, as if he already knew what was coming next. This peace won't last, he murmured. Their calm is only the silence before the storm. To be continued.